Let's talk about freedoms, the freedoms of entrepreneurship that are sort of handed out constantly, discussed, and shared abundantly through marketing. But I wonder when the last time you actually contemplated what it meant to you and actually really contemplated what a freedom is in its truest sense. And so I wanted to share with you the three freedoms I believe entrepreneurship gives, the greatest freedoms of all. I often say I'm unemployable at this point in my career, and it's true because first of all, I don't know anybody that would be able to pay me what I'm worth and also give me the freedoms that I have designed in my life and my business. And to me, it's one of the greatest rewards of what we do beyond the income. The ability to be in these freedoms is what I believe so many people are seeking and looking for and desiring for themselves, but is really the truest form and asset to entrepreneurship. So the three are time, money, and expression. And this has been just so sweet in my career as I think back in my 20 years of how this has evolved for me. And maybe my initial idea of what it was isn't what, in fact, what it truly is. And I wanted to share some of that story with you and encourage you to maybe take a look and redefine what each of these freedoms mean. So let's start with time. I remember when I started entrepreneurship, there was this group I was involved with other entrepreneurs doing similar things I was doing, and they were talking about going to the beach. That time freedom meant you were going to work really hard, and then you're going to reach this place in your business where you did nothing and you retired and you went to the beach. And that was so attractive to me for multiple reasons. First of all, I hadn't really traveled in my life, so the idea of retiring at the beach was just, it sounded so luxurious to me and appealing. And also the idea that I could work for a short amount of time and then retire and live at the beach for the rest of my life. I was like, sign me up. But I realized around 2 years into the business, working diligently on the business, that I don't know if in fact it was true. The mentors who I was surrounded by weren't at the beach, retired, and they had been doing it for far longer than I had. And I also started to realize, is that really what we're ultimately looking for? I was questioning time freedom. And I'll never forget sitting in the car on my way to the airport with a few people that I'd been at a conference with. And I looked at the one person who was further ahead from me in her business and had grown something really beautiful. And I said to her, when I started, they kept telling me, and I kept reading, and everything that I was immersed in said, you work and you go to the beach. And she's like, well, listen, if you had known the truth, would you have started? And I remember feeling like stabbed in the heart, feeling so betrayed by this idea and this vision that was casted that this is what entrepreneurship was. And I have to own the fact that I was very naive. I didn't have entrepreneurs in my world. So everything that was shared to me by these mentors and women that were doing what I wanted to do, I hung on it like it was gold. I listened to their words and I took it as truth because I had nothing to discern with. It was just their word and my lack of experience. And when she said that to me, I remember thinking to myself, I am never going to paint a picture of untruth in order to keep people inspired and alive for their dreams. Instead, what if we got more comfortable with the idea of the work and of the vision, and it not being that we do this to leave it, but that we do this to build it into a legacy. So I had to question what time freedom meant for me. If it wasn't going to the beach, what was it? And this is something that I feel we take for granted in entrepreneurship often. We have time freedom actually as soon as we start, especially if you're doing this full time. Now, for some of you working full time and building your business on the side, you might not have time freedom right now. As a matter of fact, it might feel the complete opposite. You're working more, have less freedoms than ever. But you have to remember, you're doing this for a short term and to be able to leave that corporate career or maybe go down to part-time to create more time freedom for yourself. So that is a short-lived chapter as you grow. But if you're doing entrepreneurship as a full-time career, you signed up for time freedom as soon as you decided to be an entrepreneur. Why? Because you get to design your days from day one. You get to curate the way your schedule works, the way you move through your day, the way you prioritize the things in your life. That is actually time freedom. Time freedom, it just was so real when I understood it. Wasn't that I had nothing to do. That wasn't time freedom. It was that the time I had, I was able to use it and do the things I wanted to do within it. And I understood that. It was like a light bulb moment for me, and there was no looking back. I stopped waiting to retire on the beach, and I started realizing that it's how I live every day. It showed up when my kids would get sick from school and be home, and I could rearrange my day and my calls to be present with them because they needed me. I got to prioritize them and tell my clients or those calls that I needed to reschedule, and I didn't have to ask a boss. I didn't have to ask permission. I got to do that. Time freedom meant to me that every single morning, I don't touch my phone until my kids get on the bus. I'm getting them ready for school, welcoming them in the morning, giving them snuggles and love, and creating a warm meal and making sure their lunches are there and wishing them a beautiful day. As soon as they're gone, I get to focus in on my business and do the thing that, fills me up and gives me purpose. And then I close my day off to welcome them home from school when they get off the bus. That, it's not about perfection, but it's making sure everything that matters to me fits in my day. This also lends to the conversation around balance. I feel like sometimes we miss time freedom because we're seeking a balance, that everything has to have equal parts. Well, there's nothing equal. I even think about that with my kids. I've got 4 kids. So imagine if I felt like being a balanced mom meant that every single one of my children had equal time with me. What a naive and almost selfish type of mentality, because I might have one child that had a hard day at school and requires more of my attention than one that's happy to sit in front of the TV and veg for the rest of the night because they're good. It's not about equal parts. It's about how we seize our day, how we seize our time, and the presence we give to things. I work a 3-day work week. But that doesn't mean the other 4 days I'm not actively pursuing my life and business. It means I'm forward facing for 3 days a week, and I sandwich my week with intentional time where I can create and be with myself and just have this space to think or write or, come up with my next idea. Client facing and team facing for 3 days a week, and giving myself Fridays where I woo myself and ask myself what I desire and answer that desire to give back to myself before the weekend when the kids get home. And it doesn't mean, again, that I'm not weaving in some work in those days, or, maybe one of the kids is homesick and I have to shift the way I move through my week. But that is the time freedom, that I get to do those things. I get to get my kids on the bus and I get to get them off the bus. I get to work during the day. I get to work wherever I want in my home or wherever I desire. Maybe it's a coffee shop. To me, that is the freedom. So I challenge you to think about, what does time freedom mean to you? And if you've bought into this idea that you're going to work for a short amount of time to sit at the beach, is this really a passion? Is your business really your legacy? Because if you're trying to escape from it and you're looking forward to not doing it anymore, I wonder how sincere your mission is. I can't fathom not doing what I'm doing. Even in my hardest days, I can't imagine not being someone that lifts up women and serves women and helps them build their own life and business, that doesn't create a gorgeous magazine that is sitting on people's coffee table books. What a privilege, what an honor. I'm not looking to let those things go to sit on the beach. And as a matter of fact, just so you know, there's a time where you're going to be able to sit at the beach and still build the thing. I go to the beach all the time. I love to travel. And it's not about one or the other. It's about being able to have the best of all the worlds together. That is time freedom. So I challenge you to define what that means for you and to look and respect how that is not earned, but given to you the moment you decide to do entrepreneurship. The second thing is money freedom, right? Financial freedom. This is something I would say across the board we all desire. Is there an exception to that rule? I don't think so, because if you look at statistics and you look at what causes stress for people or causes stress in relationships, it's money, it's finances. And so most people are looking for financial freedom. Here's what we've bought into. We believe financial freedom is a certain amount of money, a certain amount of commas, a certain amount of income every single month, that means we're financially free. And I had a really rude awakening the first time I had a $100,000 month. I literally thought that meant I was free. Again, I bought into the story. I bought into the hype, just like so many people do. And so when it happened and I had that $100,000 month, first of all, I don't want to put that down because it was absolutely one of the greatest blessings. What abundance. I am just so grateful that I was able to touch that level of success. Most people will never experience that in their lifetime, but it didn't create freedoms. It didn't change my life. I didn't sit back and never worry again about my finances. And I think we put so much power over to a dollar amount that's going to create our freedom, that we neglect to see that actual financial freedom is the way you move with money, the way you feel when things are tight, the way you associate income and revenue and yourself with it. When I was $100,000 in debt, and that's a true story, and it was awful. It was awful. If you're someone listening and you have a tremendous amount of debt, I feel you. I see you. It takes over every thought, every pore on your body, because it feels like you're in quicksand. I get it. But I had to really reframe myself with money to get out of that, because what I was doing wasn't working. The more money I made wasn't actually relieving a lot of the pressure. It felt like the more I made, the more I spent. And this is a huge issue for most entrepreneurs. You start to create more income, more revenue in your business, and immediately you start to spend it. Immediately you start to hire. I've helped countless clients who come to me, and as soon as they started to tip towards, 10K, 20K months, they went out and hired an entire team really fast, prematurely, and then were so stressed about their money and their income because they had to pay all these people that they actually had their business white-knuckled and in so much intensity that it fell backwards, when truthfully it could have kept going forward. See, we equate money and financial freedom to dollars in the bank. And actually what it is when you stop thinking about it so much. When I got myself out of debt, when I stopped allowing my worth to be attached to how much money I was making every month, when I stopped thinking that when I make more, then I will have, something really dramatic shifted in my spirit. Something really dramatic happened in my life. I remember the moment when I actually touched and felt financial freedom for the first time. And it was really bizarre in many ways and not what I anticipated. It was when all of a sudden I realized I hadn't looked at my bank account in a couple of days. I wasn't thinking about when somebody paid me. I wasn't checking Stripe. I wasn't in my DMs chasing the next sale. It was just neutral. I hadn't thought about money. I hadn't thought, how am I going to pay the bill? Or I hadn't thought how much money is in the bank. I was free. I wasn't allowing it to rule my world or rule my mind. It was simply just this neutral place where it wasn't controlling everything that I did. And I realized that's actual financial freedom. When you stop allowing it to consume everything within your thoughts, the way you lead, the way you move through your day. And that actually isn't attached to a dollar amount. That's attached to who you are and how you are leading. Now, that can be difficult to hear when you are in debt. I remember when I was $100,000 in debt, and if someone had said that to me, I would have probably felt agitated and thought you don't know, you don't understand. But if you can't lead yourself now and look at the blessings that have been given to you and be grateful for the fact that you can turn your tap on and you can choose the temperature of your water, that you can open a fridge and it's keeping all of your food at a perfect temperature so it doesn't go bad, that you can flip a switch and your lights go on or they go off, that you can listen to news or, go outside safely and meet someone for coffee. Like if we can't be grateful for those things in the moments where we feel really tight and maybe depleted financially, I really want to challenge you to take a fresh perspective, because if you can start being grateful for what is, and that is not easy when you have a lot of debt, I know, but if you can challenge yourself to find all the blessings, I promise you that they will start to compound. I promise you that you will take your power back from the debt. You will take your worthiness back and not associate that with what you have or don't have. And you will start to taste, touch, and experience financial freedom. It is not $1 million business that's going to create that for you. It's not. As a matter of fact, I did a program called Lavish last year. And one of the most profound moments in that entire 3-day experience was when I asked the women in the room, what's your freedom number? Like really think about it. What is that number that if you were to create that in your business would be life-changing? What really floored them, and I wish you could see their faces. And if you join Lavish, you'll see their faces, but their awe of realizing how close it was. Like they couldn't believe that it was a finger length away. It wasn't $100,000 month actually for them. The freedom came with a $10,000 month or an $8,000 month. For some of them, it was $15,000. It was different for everyone. And so it should be, because everybody's different and has different experiences and things in their life. But what was so grounding for them was to realize they were putting so much attention onto these big numbers as though that equivalated to success and financial freedom, but it was actually like this close. They didn't have to do a whole lot more, and they just had to embrace that number, because you have to get there first. You have to reach 10K to get to the 100K. You don't go from kindergarten to university. There's all these levels and steps and graduations to get there. So why not be grateful for the first 10K month and then look forward to the 12K and the 15 and the 20? And that's when you start enjoying the journey. And that's when you start experiencing freedoms, because you're not so attached to a number meaning so much to you. So look in the mirror around what you sort of define financial freedom as, because it is not a number and it is an absolute feeling. And you will experience it for yourself as well. That first time you notice, I haven't been checking so much or fixated so much, and I think I'm free. And lastly is personal freedom. I am so grateful that I have the platform and a business that gets to shape alongside of me, that as I'm growing as a woman, as my interests change, as my children grow older, as my personal taste or style shifts, that I actually can build a business and it gets to grow alongside of me, that I'm not stuck at a cubicle with a title where I'm fitting into something. And instead, I have the opportunity to allow something to move and graduate alongside of me, that I can shift and pivot to something totally different. It was 2018 when I hemorrhaged because I was forcing a business to work, and everything in my body and spirit was so exhausted from talking to women about wellness. I didn't align with diet culture anymore. I just felt like I was doing a disservice rather than helping women become like just their fullest vitality. And I knew I had graduated. I knew that that was no longer the conversation that I exclusively wanted to have. And so that pivot, as difficult and challenging as it was something that I deeply celebrate, because I was able to do that. I was able to gather all the lessons and gather the leadership and gather the success that enabled me to shift and move over to something that was different, the launch of Becoming Iconic. I had people tell me that I was stealing people's dreams, that I was hurting people, that, people wanted to have what I'd have, and I would steal their belief because now I was doing something else. I mean, there was all sorts of drama around this pivot. But after hemorrhaging and having that whole experience, I've shared that on the podcast before of what happened there, and honoring myself, deciding that my truth and my journey is the most important thing. I cannot build my life and business around what people want from me, but instead I have to build a life and business around my truth, because if I do that, I have to believe that that's integrity. And when I'm in integrity, that's going to bring beautiful gifts and abundance, and I'm going to be blessed as a result. And making that move was dramatic, but also the most beautiful, beautiful permission slip. And it taught me that pivots are a part of entrepreneurship and our journey. We could pivot. I just did going into Substack. That was a slight pivot. It wasn't a platform that I'd been on before. So, there's one there. Or shifting my branding, or shifting my offerings, or doing a podcast now with video. Like, all of these are micro pivots that allow my business to be a part of who I am and an expression of who I am. I'm not held back because of entrepreneurship. Instead, I'm actually constantly nudged and pushed on the skinny branch. It's when we allow ourselves to evolve and allow our business to evolve alongside of us that you will have legacy. It's why I'm still standing for this long, not because what I did in day one is what I do today, but because I took it alongside of me. And sometimes my business was pushing me up the hill, and sometimes I was pushing the business up the hill, but we've been in it together. It's a relationship. And so this is where you get to give yourself the permission to realize that's a freedom, and we take it for granted. We take for granted the flexibility. I've described entrepreneurship like a dog. You can leave your dog for hours and you show up and your dog is so happy to see you. The tail's wagging and they're just like they've seen you for the first time. Or maybe you just went in the other room and came back and they look at you like they've never seen you in years. I think entrepreneurship is very much the same. It kind of wags its tail at us. It allows us to grow. It allows us to evolve. And it forgives a lot of those things that maybe are mishaps or times we've taken it for granted. And if you looked at it that way, what would be possible for you? What are you resisting? What are you thinking that you've done once, so you've got to keep doing? And instead look at it and go, well, I did it once and it worked, but I want to do something different. Giving yourself that flexibility and permission. This is a freedom of entrepreneurship that I believe is that expression and is that freedom that we kind of put to the side for the money and the time. But to me is the greatest reward. Who I've become because of what I do is the greatest gift. It really is. It's worth more than millions in my bank because of who I show up as and the way I move through my day and lead my relationships, the example that I've given. It's really just such an important facet to what we're doing here and a freedom that I'd love you to start celebrating more and more. So how do you define time freedom? Remembering it's not about retiring at the beach. Instead, it's about building every day so exquisitely you never want to leave. What is money freedom to you? Remembering it's not about commas in the bank. As a matter of fact, you hear it all the time. The more money people make, sometimes the more unhappy they become. Money freedom is really that point where you are neutral, where you just kind of like dance with it. You're in this waltz. And then personal freedom, expression, allowing yourself to be exactly who you are and take the journey that nobody else has ever done before. And when you do that, you will be alive and everything will start to amplify. And you will be so glad you made the decision to be a founder and an entrepreneur. So think of those things. Celebrate every micro win in each of those categories. And remember, this is not earned, but instead experienced.